Claire slammed through the RPD courtyard iron gate. She landed on her side on the cool pavement. She kicked open the gate and closed as the zombie's arms clamored and wrapped around the bronze bars. She let out a deep sigh, rose from her lying position, dragging her ponytail from the concrete, keeping her handgun trained to the gate. Claire turned to see the courtyard, leading to the main entrance with well-guarded, shuffling, mindless creatures. 3 of them, to be exact. Dodging them would be a challenge, even if she stuck to the low stone walls and the perimeter. The courtyard was small to begin with. Claire would have nowhere to go if they got a hold of her. She turned her attention to a nearby stone stair. Well, she approached it with her gun drawn. It appeared to lead down to a dark archway that led up to the other side of the main entrance, where she would enter the building. All seemed well until her eyes got caught of something. A moving shadow staggering in the darkness below. It was the only one in the passageway. Weighing the options, 1 versus 3 wasn't too hard to choose. Claire readied her firearm and descended to the darkness. Instead of stepping into the dark archway, she tapped, but all of her browning against the concrete wall had watched as the shadow's gaze caught hers. Claire took a step back and steadied her arm until it stumbled into view. The zombie wore a camo pants and a yellow vest, and it had an RPD ID that read Vickers. Claire recognized the label above his name, Stars. It was her brother's unit. God, if only he was still alive, maybe he'd know where Chris is. Claire took a deep breath and pulled the trigger, setting the round between his eyes. Claire took a moment to make sure he was down before approaching his body. She ruffled through his pockets and waistband, produced a magazine for a Beretta in his holster. Claire almost took it but decided against it. The police station would have more weapons, and carrying the extra weight of a weapon that fired the same caliber as a waste of space. Instead, she removed the magazine from the gun and popped a few rounds in the magazine. She counted 8. She must have been firing his weapon before his death. She also removed his ID from his wallet. It was his STARS card, and it would have proved useful against gain access inside the RPD. Sorry, Brad, Claire muttered, before jogging down to the rest of the dark tunnel. She took the stairs, 2 at a time, whipped her weapon around the main entrance area, and entered the large main doors. At first, Jack thought he was dreaming. He had fallen asleep and hearing the echoing footsteps in a dream. As they got louder and started to close in, his eyes shot open. He rolled off the cot and it felt his legs immediately gave out. Jack scrambled for the iron bars of his cell and let his lungs fill with air before screaming for his life. I am in here! Please help! Just then the footsteps stopped in front of the door. In the cells! Please don't leave me here! Just then the door creaked open, and then stepped in a girl around his age, holding a small handgun in her grasp. Jack felt his jaw drop when he caught himself as he looked at their appearance. She was dressed in black with shorts and a red vest. Her hair was brown in a ponytail. She held her weapon with purpose, like she was clear she was a survivor. She turned from her desk and saw that the body-covered floor. She trained her gun to the corpses until Jack spoke up. No worries, they're long dead. Jack realized how much that must have sounded. I mean, it's been a crazy night. She raised her eyebrow at him as she approached, stepping over the corpse as it went. What the hell happened here? Jack seemed to not hear her question. Man, I'm glad to see you. I thought I was gonna die in here. She crouched down to Charlie's body and checked his pulse. She seemed to groan and frustrated. Jack nodded. Yeah, they got him, while he was trying to get me out of here. She shot him a look of confusion. See, I'm looking for someone. Maybe you know him? Jack shook his head. Sorry, I doubt. Yeah, I was just being held for my trial. Your trial? What did you do? Jack chose his words carefully. I got a DUI. She shook her head. A trial over a DUI? Yeah, I think it's the way they transferred me here in the first place. A smaller city, a smaller court, he said to her nervously. Right. She plucked the keys away from the body and got up and turned to leave. Wait, Jack pleaded. She turned to him. with her gun holstered now. My name is Jack. What's yours? My name's Claire. Claire Redfield. I need to get moving, Claire said as she began to leave here. Jack gasped before the bars before him. Wait! Don't leave me here! Claire shook her head. Look, I don't have time to hold someone's hand. I won't be a problem. Just please don't leave me here alone. Give me a chance, he begged, realizing her concerns were completely valid. After all, a strange man locked up a sound surrounded by a dead corpse. Claire seemed to think for a second, then looked in his eyes and seemed genuine. Just a DUI? Claire asked. Jack nodded. I made a mistake. I don't deserve to die for it. Claire took another second to think before stepping back towards his cell. I'm not sure if I could shoot the lock. Probably too dangerous. Jack's eyes darted away to her down to the keys. The cell keys are on that key ring you got from the officer's body. Claire smirked as she began trying the keys. It was almost as long as Charlie has before one clicked. She stopped halfway for the turn. Listen, she stated. Try anything, and I won't hesitate. Jack felt himself shudder at her little callous. Damn. He nodded at her. I promise. And with that, she turned the key and let the iron gate slid open with a groan. It was the most beautiful noise that he had heard all night. As he passed through the gate for the first time, he noticed how pretty she was in the light, with sparkling hazel eyes and light brown hair. She seemed to smile nervously when she caught her gaze and passed him by quickly. Any ammunition in that rifle? Claire asked. Jack shook his head. No, long story. Don't think they keep anything in here either. Claire headed for the door before stopping. Look, you could come with or run off on your own. I'm not leaving until I find my brother. You're probably better off finding a car and getting out of here. Jack froze, realizing he had no plan from where. Where would he go? What would he do? What would happen if he ran into a hallway full of zombies? Should he do what Claire suggested? Run outside into the streets and find a hot wire car? Claire said that Charlie said the perimeter has fallen. What did that mean? If you're looking for escape, I would avoid the streets altogether. Stick to the alleyways and get yourself a gun, Claire suggested as she went for the doorknob. Well, wait, Jack stuttered. Claire looked back questioningly at him. Maybe I can help you. When she raised her eyebrow at him, yet again, I mean, until we find your brother. Claire seemed to have taken an uncomfortably long amount of time to consider her option before nodding. Fine, keep it up. With that, Jack walked with her out of the cell room and didn't bother look back. He didn't care how bad it was the rest of the building. It couldn't be nearly as bad as the 4 walls that he had spent the last 8 hours in, can it? Claire led Jack down a series of hallways that she had traveled once previously. The lockup was only the unlocked door that she had found in the east wing. She had found to be concerning, but she looked through anyway. She did the number of one thing her brother warned her not to do. Trusting a criminal wasn't something in her blood, Chris had taught her, for the better. But there was something about the boy, though. Something about his eyes. Maybe it was too early to say if he was safe to be around or not, but she wasn't exactly scared of him. Maybe it was the fear of being caught alone in the reach of a pack of zombies and having no one to back her up? Or maybe those blue eyes. She almost felt compelled to yell at herself to shut up and get in her head in the game. After all, she all done her fair share of dating in college, and relationships were never her strong suit. They hurried down the halls, past a few soda machines, before hanging a left-hand turn in the corner. She lifted her gun slightly, just in case that they were taken off guard, and slowed her pace to a quick stroll. When I first come down this hall, I left a few stragglers stumbling around, she told Jack. Jack shot her a confused glares. There's nothing here, though? Exactly. Either they learned to open up the doors in the past few minutes, or something else is going. We should check the east office. I heard some movement there before. If it's a cop, maybe we could find any mission or help. Jack nodded, although he seemed uneasy. She would be too if she were tagging along with an armed stranger. He crept down the hallway and quietly placed his hand on the doorknob and waited for her to join his side. It felt like everything was going to a SWAT team. While it made her nervous to spring on the group of heavily armed policemen, she knew better and more likely it would be more of the undead. The situation took out of commission for at least a couple days. Paperwork on the many desks, whiteboards with operational plans, and even calendars were marked with dates indicating 2 days ago. It was all eerie, as if life had ceased to exist in the station all at once. All she could do was hope that Chris wasn't amongst the dead. "Open it," she whispered to Jack, who creaked the door open slowly at first. When he sighted the first zombie, it opened, faster than the armed policemen were no longer in the concern. Claire aimed the first zombie reaching for them near the doorway and pulled the trigger quickly, sending it around to the female officer's chest. She stumbled back, and Claire moved her aim towards another pair, who were creeping up around the desks nearby. Claire sent the free shots their direction and killed one instantly. Another officer, the other zombie by the desk, shook the additional 2 shots, sending them over to a chair. "Holy shit!" Claire heard Jack said, as she fired one round after round, keeping herself as calm as she could to steady her shaking hand. Just then another random creature grabbed Claire's black boot and pulled it down. Claire slipped and her gun fell into the wooden floor. She let out a sharp cry as her eyes turned from her gun to the zombie that held its head back as hard as she could. Just then the female officer zombie grabbed Jack from behind, and Jack pushed back as hard as he could, slammed her into the concrete wall. He then heard a faint crack and a loud snap. He assumed her neck was broken by the impact. She dropped off almost immediately like a sack of bricks. Claire looked up at him with worry in her eyes and regained his stability. He ran over and pulled the zombie's shoulders and looked over to see the zombie by the desk rising from the fallen chair. "Shit, get up, Claire!" Jack grabbed her arm and pulled her away. He whipped out her leg outwards and booted the zombie under the desk. Its head went back into sudden motion and dropped to the floor. Jack watched it lie motionless the movement longer when his thoughts turned to the hand. The ghoul from behind the desk got its grasp on its coat and pulled at him, mouth open with teeth ready to feast. When its head was knocked to one side, blood shot out in the opposite direction. Jack turned his head to see Claire breathing deeply, grasping at her weapon. The semi-automatic 9mm had smoke blowing out its barrel. "You okay?" she asked. Jack tried to hide the fact that she was out of breath, but was scared shitless. He nodded to get to his feet. "Check the office for supplies. I would be shocked if none of the cops were armed," Claire said as she holstered her weapon and walked to the opposite side of the office. The office itself was fairly large. A large majority of the officers' desks were definitely located there. Some of the monitors were dimly lit, with no signal messages on them. Claire watched the floor in front of her beaten beneath each desk, and after the terrifying experience she just had, she stopped with a bullet riddled at the corpse against the wall, and she unholstered her handgun. The breath stirred in her hand slightly as she felt her bones tremble. Every corpse was a hazard. The dead could spring to life at any moment. She held the gun up to its head and examined it closer, bringing its face in. This one had no visible bite marks or violent inhuman injuries like the other zombies she'd seen. In fact, Claire was willing to bet this zombie was not at all. The corpse was riddled with bullets, and the name on its badge was Thompson. Whoever he was, he hadn't been dead that long and wasn't coming back. His skin was still warm. Just then Jack appeared to her side and he jumped. "Oh my God!" He crouched slower. "Sorry." She nodded. "It's not my brother." Jack seemed to sigh a little, as if he was relieved, but she wasn't sure. Jack had reached for the officer's leather chest holster under his coat. The man appeared to be a detective, not like the other cops in blue and tan uniforms. Jack lowered his holster over his shoulders and made sure the holster fell onto his left side of his right arm could reach quickly. He reached into the holster and pulled the handgun, its holster, and examined it carefully on the side while spraying XDM 9mm. He stood up and pointed at both hands at the butt and peered down at the sights. He had a little bit of experience with guns from his father with shooting ranges. He pressed the magazine release and took a quick look at how many rounds the clip could carry. 19. Looks like Thompson only fired a weapon a few times. There were 14 rounds in the magazine currently. Jack slid the magazine back into the weapon and holstered it. He looked down at Claire, who was still looking at the pale body. "What's going on?" She seemed slightly annoyed by its question. "It's the body. This man wasn't bitten. He was shot to death," Jack whispered over her. "Someone else is in this building, Jack," Claire said. Her thoughts turned to Leon. But Leon wouldn't shoot a fellow police officer. "Who?" "Another man I met before I got here. Leon. He's one of the officers here. Said it was his first day." "Well, I see your point, Claire. We need to be careful and watch out for each other. If someone's running around the police station killing anything in sight, we have more to worry about than we thought." Claire's gaze sharpened at him. "I agree, but we need to trust each other if that's the case." Jack nodded. "If there's anything else I need to know about, now is the time to reveal it," Claire said. Jack seemed to think for a second. "Well, I'm a Scorpo, if that's what you mean." "Oh, don't get your hopes up. I'm assuming that means no." Jack shook his head. "Look, I made a mistake and I'm stuck here. I just want out and that's it. I know you have no reason to believe me, but please just give me the time so I could prove it to you." Claire smiled a little. She had been a little hard on him up until now. She could lay him off a bit if he was going to put up an effort. "Right now, I think we need to continue upstairs. There's a fire escape I entered from my first time, though. The path should be clear." Jack nodded. "One more thing," Claire started. "These stains won't go down unless you destroy the brain. A bullet is always the best. But breaking the neck or spine seems to work, though. I wouldn't recommend going against the things with nothing." Jack nodded as he unholstered his weapon. "Ladies first." Leon worked his way through the halls. He had only needed to take out 2 of the monsters before finding the back room back inside the Fordson dark room inside. He had found some handgun ammunition and even some kind of medical first aid spray. No sign of other officers. Who knows how far they went before getting lost, turning around or worse. Leon shook his head at the thought and shuffled through, pointing his weapon around the tight corners. He decided the best logical step would be to head off to the roof anyway. He could get a fix on his surroundings. It was a good thought, with the most logical next step. He then could be working his way downstairs again to the officers. Start with the easiest, most likely scenario, then work your way to the main hall. He finally reached the 3rd floor and found a maintenance closet. He opened the door slowly and then quick to find the zombie feasting on a corpse. Without hesitating, he fired his HNK once, twice, hitting the head the second time, sending the beast down on top of its meal. Leon was starting to notice a pattern with these creatures. The headshots were most effective way to take them down. He remembered how terrifying they had once seemed out onto the streets. But really, when you got down to it, they could just be killed as quickly as they could. Mentally, it helped him cope with the fact that he was dealing with monsters in the eyes, and shooting it would be to the human beings in the hallways of his new station. The thought of it made him sick. Understanding their mortality made it easier. Maybe easier isn't the word. Numb sounds more like it. He found himself wishing that he had listened to the phone call urging for him to stay away, that he would have picked up the phone and called his now ex-girlfriend back and apologized for whatever stupid thing he did. Everything seemed so stupid and silly now. He searched the closet quickly before noticing it. Everything he was looking for. A maintenance ladder to the roof. He holstered his gun and climbed up the ladder to the exit, and stopped at the sight of the padlock dangling off to the side. In any situation like this wouldn't faze him. It would be deliberate if he was placed there. Leon pulled the handle on the switch hatch and lifted away slowly so he could see. The coast seemed clear. He lifted more and scrambled onto the flat surface of the roof. Leon raised his weapon and scanned the roof. Rain began to pour off his boots and shuffled across the concrete. Near the roof's edge was a body uniform. He wasn't moving. Leon trained his weapon to the figure. "RPD, let me see your hands." There was no movement or answer. From what Leon could see, this was the only other person on the roof. Leon stepped forward and used his foot to kick the body over. No response. They were dead. He rolled them over and checked the badge. Stevens. Damn it. It was another of Officer Brangan's said, looking for a way out. Leon checked the officer's wristband and retrieved the spare magazine. He took the time to work the rounds out of the clip and threw it to the side. Leon checked the man's chest for a pocket and found a small notebook with scribblings what looked like directions. Find a key to the parking garage. Retrieve the key for the armory from Starr's office. Extra ammunition found in the SWAT van garage. Escape in Brannan's cruiser. Plan B heads to the sewers using a sewer manhole hook. Leon smiled at the find. On what the man's wristband also found a silver key card. On the face was labeled with the description for RPD parking garage. On the back of the card was a logo, Umbrella Corporation, with their ever-recognizable logo shining on the back. Leon also pried the man's fingers away to reveal an orange flare gun. He popped it open to find the one unused flare. What surprised Leon was the man to still find warm to touch. Whatever killed him couldn't be far, and the thought of him shudder. What did kill him anyway? There were no wounds. Well, nothing usually, unfortunately, but just bullet holes. Someone killed the officers who was practically fine. But why? Was it a mistake? Just then he heard it. What Stephen's body probably just heard before he died. The whirling of the helicopter blades. Leon sprung into action and raced to the side of the roof to the stone railing to see a helicopter passing by. Leon raised both of his arms. "Hey, over here!" He pointed to the flare to the sky and pulled the trigger. The helicopter seemed to react immediately and swung around. For a moment, Leon swore that he could see the pilot's face. Leon couldn't believe it. The nightmare was almost over. The helicopter hovered over and seemed to lower a bit. A side hatch opened and the ladder fell from the opening. The rope ladder had a ring attached for him to climb up on. He would soon find Claire and tell the rescue team about Brannan, and it would all be over. That was when a searing streak of orange fire and blazing yellow slammed into the helicopter, sending it dripping towards another area of the police station roof, onto the second floor or the east wing. "Shit!" Leon screamed as he threw the useless piece of orange plastic onto the ground. He was not going to get out alive. Jack saw it, as bright as the sun, a lone light spark up into the night sky from out of the window view roofing of the opposite end of the castle-like police station. He pointed out to Claire, who then let out a gasp. What looked like a projectile collided with the chopper and sent it careering in their direction onto the outdoor fire escape. Claire grabbed his hand and pulled him up as the stairs and the helicopter spun around and dipped forward in the direction. They crashed through a door leading to the second floor, east hallway, and Jack kicked open the door closed. They threw their arms over their heads and felt the force of the helicopter hit the building, shattering the windows, breaking the concrete, and binding iron. A small fire broke out of the hall as the engine and the electrical equipment let out sparks in fiery protest. "You okay?" Jack said. Claire was already on her feet, looking around the corner. "What the hell was that all about?" she said as she turned to him on the floor. "Maybe they're sending a rescue crews in?" Jack suggested as he got up finally. "We should have seen if anyone made it. Come on!"